Welcome to the OMG podcast, brought to you by Onward Media Group. Join us as we explore storytelling with video, life as a startup, and community impact in Kitchener-Waterloo. We dive into industry trends, behind-the-scenes insights, and the challenges and successes of our journey. Whether you're a creative, entrepreneur, or just passionate about video and storytelling, we've got something for you. Now let's get into today's episode.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the OMG podcast, or OMG a podcast is actually what it is. I'm Jordan Taylor of Onward Media Group, and here with me I have Darren Bondy, our CEO. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited. I'm always excited to be here, even though it's our own podcast.
It's our own podcast, but if we believe in it, it will succeed.
I think so.
So today, Darren, what we're going to be getting into is why video is an essential tool for businesses, something that is probably not foreign to most people, but what we're going to focus on today is how easy it is to get wrong.
Yeah, fair. And I think the one thing that stands out first is that every business understands in today's landscape that video is crucial. And I think that's consistent across industries. I think, there are some industries that probably won't move the needle at all if they leverage video. Some of them are established and have been around for decades and may not need video. But for those businesses that are looking to get a leg up and actually compete in a competitive market, video is essential. I think most business leaders understand that, and it's about how do you do that effectively within budget that is not going to just fall short of your expectations or be disappointed in the relationship between the vendor and the outcome. And so I think it is important, and it's really easy to get wrong because there are many ways to do video, grassroots efforts, full production teams, freelancers, smaller companies.
All the ways.
There are so many options out there. How do you get it right? And I think that is a great question. I think I would like to. Getting it right is actually probably more about understanding who you're working with. I think a big part of where people can go wrong is saying, okay, I want an outcome that is high production value. I don't necessarily understand that where the budget lands with that. And I think oftentimes you'll say, okay, look at this person's quality looks like it's okay.
So clearly there are a cornucopia of ways to be able to approach the video storytelling medium as a business. What are some of the biggest either concerns, hesitations, or pitfalls that you've been noticing in your most recent conversations with business leaders?
I think the one thing that stands out the most is building a relationship on trust with the vendor that you're choosing, and whether you're choosing a vendor or not. So a lot of times there is a situation where, okay, maybe our marketing team can put something together. Maybe we can use phones and have our intern create content, and that's sometimes that is enough depending on what your brand is. But I think when it comes to building trust with the client and with the vendor, that goes a long way in the relationship part. And I think that's important, not only because it's any type of project you work on together, there is an element of like the relationship has to be strong because there's back and forth. It's not just we give you something and you come back to us with a final product. Like there's a lot of back and forth. Would you agree? Like, is that kind of?
Yeah, because video is such an intimate medium, or the outcome from doing video production ends up being a very, it's literally a window into someone's business. It's a window into a business's culture. It's a window into the team that makes a business work, or the ideas that make that business work, right? So it's really important to get it right, to get the essence of the story that a business is trying to tell. And to your point, that does require a ton of trust, right? That doesn't happen overnight, and that doesn't happen keeping things at a surface level. In order for businesses to feel confident about the video that they're doing, they have to trust their video partner.
And I think that what kind of jumps out to me with that is if you're a larger business and you have, okay, I have a project coming up, we have a campaign to promote a product launch, a new service, changes to the business. If you go out and say, okay, we're going to go hire a vendor, get them on this project, you now have to like build a relationship with that vendor. You may have a previous relationship with them, and like again, that's where you can leverage those relationships. But trying to understand, okay, how do we get the messaging across about what our brand is, like that look into our business? Like you have to become like friends with these people to deliver effective content. It doesn't mean that you can't have like a solo relationship with somebody you talked to them the first time and they hit it out of the park, but you're rolling the dice on whether or not that group or that team or that freelancer is willing and able to do a deep dive on your business and understand what your actual objectives are. And I think that is where we have found the value in what we can do is instead of just, giving us a project and saying, okay, you told us you needed these deliverables, you told us where to be and when to shoot it, you provided a script. We're like, I want to better understand what it is that you're trying to do so that when we get to the production part of the project, that we're basically part of the team at that point. Like we're an extension of their team and we have a sense of what their brand is, what the messaging is, what their objectives are with this video, with this campaign, the broader campaign. And I'd like to develop a deeper relationship with the client. And sometimes budgets don't allow for that and time doesn't allow for that. But in a perfect world, if a large company doesn't have an internal team, having a partner, having someone who is an extension of your team is the next most valuable way to do it, as opposed to just looking for someone to do this project on a per project basis. And I think that is where you can separate the difference between a freelancer, between a production company, and someone who wants to partner with you beyond that. I think there's a lot of value in that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you can feel the difference when a partner, whether video or otherwise, is coming from a surface level, just, okay, what's the project brief? What's the deliverable format? What's the deliverable expectation? Now, while that is important to get to and is necessary, it doesn't necessarily need to be the first thing that we discuss when we first meet. It doesn't need to be even the essence. It's on the fringes. It's through those conversations, understanding not only, okay, what is a business's objective or their objectives, but also who are they and how do we ensure that comes across in video,
in every piece of content too.
I
think that's the other part of it too, is that there's a framework and a relationship that is kind of built from some starting point, right? And so coming into the fold with a group and saying, okay, let's just get a better understanding of what your business is, what your objectives are, and so that carries through multiple projects. And maybe those projects are only once a year or once every 6 months or once a quarter. There's still, if that relationship is built on trust and understanding, and there is a foundation there, it's not picking up from the bottom every time we do this. It's like, let's get together. Oh, we're talking about a new project. Okay, well, we know the brand, we know the messaging. It's important that messaging is consistent, and for us to then take it to the next level, we already have that foundation set. And I think starting from scratch every time is a burden on marketing teams. It's a burden on all the branding and asset, like all that stuff, forming that relationship, even from, if you want to get even more specific, down to billing, right? Like when you have an established partner, there's an understanding there that they've delivered work for you before. You know what to expect from them. You know what the relationship is. It leads to a healthier, more efficient relationship.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that part of it, instead of having to like bring it back down to the studs and say, okay, here's a new group, let's figure out how to do video. Being able to come in with that understanding and that background knowledge already, because that's how we work. And we do that for everybody. It's not even just something we do for specific clients. Is we're going to do our due diligence on understanding what you're trying to do. And then figuring out, I think the next thing where this leads is using our expertise to effectively tell that brand story. Whether that's, again, it can be as specific as an individual campaign about a project, or as broad as we just want to get the word out about what we're doing here. And I think I'd like to talk a little bit about kind of how do we effectively do that. And I want to kind of pass it over to you to give some insight on like what are the effective ways to help convey a marketing strategy through the medium of video.
Yeah, there's many different ways to go about it. It also depends so greatly on the pain points that a business is, like where that business is at in their respective journey, right? It could be battling myths or misunderstandings or misconceptions of what they make, who they serve, how they do business. So it could be a matter of trying to truly own their own narrative, right? And be able to tell their story that way. That's one potential path. It also could be, a business is venturing into something new and somewhere where they haven't been before, and they need to make a clear distinction, not only of them and separating them from other businesses that do similar things, but also from what they've done in the past, right? And making that new offering, whatever it is, making it clear and distinct and also exciting and energizing for whoever the intended audience is. Excuse me. It also, it could be trying to give potential investors a true look at who a business is, to understand, okay, this is what you're buying into. And even if that investor is the end consumer or a client or an actual investor, but showcasing, okay, this is what you're buying into. It's not just what you see on our website. This goes so much deeper, right? And I think another thing I would love to get into on this, because we can very easily sit here and say this is why video is great. This is why we do video in a great way. But I think what a lot of people experience, and people have told us this on onboarding calls that we have, that they've been burned in the past, or they didn't get the results that they were looking for, even if they had a decent enough experience with a previous video partner. The outcome didn't meet their expectations or didn't meet their dreams or their desire. And that has so many different ways that it can look. There's so many ways that not even necessarily that video could go wrong, but that it goes not where a client would hope that it goes.
And I think to list, like if you wanted to go straight out and list it, right? Like there's the timelines didn't align. Whether or not, like, and a lot of times, I'm not going to pick on anybody, but like even when it comes to the more common one you hear from freelancers or about freelancers is that oftentimes they can just like disappear, be lack of communication, right? So you put your hands in a freelancer because you're like, you know what, budget's there, they're going to do the whole thing themselves. They've been really eager to get this job. A lot of times you hear about that and they're like, well, we haven't heard from them in 6 weeks. And now we're still waiting for our content. And then they get the content and they're disappointed in it. And the revision process is painful. And so we definitely hear that one often. There's a litany of other ways, whether it's you arrange to have it done a certain way and the quality isn't there. I don't know if that's like, I mean, there's a range of what we consider to be, of professional quality. And hopefully you're doing enough due diligence in your research process of hiring someone that you've at least looked at portfolio pieces to understand what to expect. But a lot of times it's almost like people are getting fooled. I don't know if it's by freelancers or companies, probably more so on the smaller scale side, like in solopreneurs that are trying to make a go of it. But we get that whole thing, like, we've heard this story before and we've gotten burned by it. And so-and-so told us this and we ended up, they wanted to charge us X amount of dollars more to do this. And I find it harms our ability to build trust because they kind of paint us with all the same brush. And I think if we were to speak to our clients, I think most would agree that at the end of the day, we are for sure going to make sure that our products and our deliverables and the relationship and the whole process is one that leaves them feeling like they've been at least treated properly and their needs have been met, regardless of how long that takes. And obviously there's a line to that, but I think we are pretty good about making sure that at the end of the day, the client is happy with what they have. And, one of our core values is exceeding client expectations. And I think I think we do a pretty good job of that. But it's trying to break the stigma of why is it so challenging to articulate what it takes to put a video production, like to put a campaign together. And it's because there have been teams and companies that have said, you know what, we're going to roll the dice on this. It sounds like a good idea. And they get burned and they're like, we're not doing that again.
And it sounds like even just that, we're going to roll the dice on this.
Yeah.
That trust clearly isn't there,
yeah.
or the understanding. So I think there is a miseducation piece too. And I think that's another reason why it's so important for not only for us to have these types of discussions and publish these, but then also be very transparent, very clear, very intentional with how we educate clients through the onboarding process, right? Letting people know, hey, we're going to ask you some questions to get to know you as a business. The reason we do that is so that we can ensure we bake that into the DNA of your content and figure out, okay, do we go for a more polished, scripted approach? Do we go totally off the cuff because that's where you shine? Like we've been in video shoots with clients that we've prepared something scripted and it came out okay, not bad by any means. And we, again, through establishing that trust, we say, let's do this again. Don't do the script. Let me just ask you, tell me about this launch you have coming up. Why does it matter to you? And then they give their off the cuff response. And a lot of the times we end up taking that second take and we might have to do it a little bit of mixing and matching to get it to flow and create a higher level narrative that we can incorporate B-roll and all these other things into. But that authentic delivery is going to land just in a more touching way. And then obviously, trying to find that balance between authentic, professional, somewhere in between to make sure that you're still being professional. You're not just there saying off the top of your head, you're umming and ahhing and hesitating, but also trying to get to the essence of what should be at the core of the campaign.
Yeah, and I think there's two things that jump out with that. One is the importance of B-roll. And I think, that can be a second segue to this. But I think the thing that jumps out right away is oftentimes when we get into these discussions with clients is that these aren't people who are actors. These aren't people who are, sometimes they're very comfortable on camera. Sometimes they're very confident and very articulate and they've done this before. They can, ream off a bunch of really well-rehearsed or not even rehearsed, but just well-spoken, articulated points. And those are super easy. But for the vast majority of these businesses, these are people who don't often sit in front of a camera. And even though they are subject experts, I don't know how many times we've had conversations with people standing in the office right before shoot time, and I'm asking them questions about the thing we're about to shoot, and they're so articulate, so expressive, so clear about this subject that they're clearly passionate about. Obviously, business leaders and even people within industries are passionate about what they're doing. They need to get that message out. As soon as the lights and camera turn on and that light goes red, they are like, okay, now I'm nervous and now I'm this. One of the things that we strive for is trying to make them as comfortable as possible. And I think the essence of what our business does as a small team, as a passionate team, and a team of creatives who have been doing this for a long time, our goal is to make them as comfortable as possible, to get the most authentic and genuine answers that also speak to the subject matter. And I think that is one area where we have excelled, because the three ways you can do it is scripted and someone's rehearsed it and they're going to read it like off the cuff, like because they've memorized it, a teleprompter or prompt response style. And I think we've seen it all before. With the teleprompter, it's hard to express the same message with the same emotion, the same expression that you would have in normal conversation like you and I are having right now. Yep. You have to force it. You can do it. It's not impossible, but if you don't do it, if you don't practice it and you don't do it regularly, it's going to feel rigid and emotionless. And we've seen that. And as you've said, to your point, even when it's scripted, when we get back to it and say, okay, now that we've gotten that part of the way, let's just have a conversation. Forget that the cameras are running. That's oftentimes why we're not doing it straight to camera too, because that authentic kind of off camera, I'm having a conversation, it is going to generate a response that is more authentic to them, is speaking to their expertise, and hopefully you've got them to a place where they're comfortable enough to talk to you about it. And that's the goal with these situations, is like, can we get you comfortable? Like, let's talk about this as people. I'm genuinely interested in what you have to say about your business, so tell me about it. And oftentimes, even if it's not to the script to a T, the content that comes out of that is just so much more useful and more authentic and more to not only the person, but the business. And I think that's really key in creating content that resonates with an audience. And then I think the second piece of that is B-roll, which again adds to the visual narrative, right? A story can be told, but a story is also meant to be seen in a lot of situations. And the fact that we have tools, and a lot of these businesses have really interesting things to show, Definitely. It's important that we show those and we don't just talk about it.
And I think it's also, I think what has shifted our approach, even in the few years we've been doing this, and not having on-camera interviews being incorporated into the video, but leaning away from 100% talking head only, and understanding the core message of the campaign, the essence of the business, the really getting a firm understanding of the narrative of the script, so that we can not only ensure that that element is captured well, but also what other storytelling devices do we need to implement to further amplify and elevate the story, right? That's going to look like B-roll. And contrary to popular belief, B-roll is not just randomly capturing interesting things. Yes, you want to capture interesting things, but you also want to capture what is going to push the story forward. Yeah. Or at the very least, that's going to future serve, another campaign down the road, right? And we can talk on why we try to capture more in a day than is absolutely necessary, because there's a whole side tangent on that we can go into. But also, again, with the B-roll, it's capturing, thinking of it as other storytelling devices other than the human voice, other than words, speech, audio, right? We could get into the sound design, getting into animation, sometimes even a photo with, a little bit of movement added to it in post can still further the story, provided it's captured well, right? There's so many other storytelling devices used within the video medium that we can and should use to further tell people's stories. Another thing to think about, and we experience this a semi-decent amount of, it's not even necessarily sticker shock in the typical sense, but rather a difficulty bridging the gap between whatever the budget is and the perception of the deliverable but only the deliverable and not factoring in those other things where a client might say, oh, it's X amount of dollars for just a 2-minute video or just one video, regardless of the length. And how I always view it is if you were to say to an Olympic athlete, oh, it's just one race.
Yeah, it's 10 seconds.
Yeah, it's just 10 seconds long, or it's just however long it is. There's years of training that goes into that. There's their shoe choice, their uniform choice, their hair choice, like all of these things, right? There's a whole team of people that go into not even just the athlete's 10 seconds, but the stadium, the ref, the all these different things. So what are your thoughts around the idea or the notion of that there are some people who view the deliverable as the sole byproduct of the budget?
I mean, one, I'll say it's not uncommon. It is often being, people are like, hey, we just need a video, 30 seconds long, no big deal. And depending on what that video is, it should be common sense that if just one video is someone standing in front of the camera and reciting a script for 30 seconds, yeah, that doesn't require the same level of production. It still requires production. It still requires pre-production to get to that point. It still requires a space to shoot that video. It requires lighting, camera equipment, a team in place, post-production, editing, all of those things. If that's the expectation from the client side, there needs to be an understanding that there's more to it. I think part of it is maybe because they're in the freelance world, there is those people that do it all themselves, but they're doing it at a production standard that is going to be lower than a production company. So again, as a business, you have to decide what's more important. Is it that the deliverable needs to be impactful and of high quality enough that when it's used, it resonates? Or does it matter to them and it's like, you know what, we'll get the intern to grab that SLR camera we have downstairs, shoot some clips at this event, throw it together in CapCut or, Apple Movie, iMovie, whatever that's called. And that's good enough for them. And that's a decision they have to make. But understanding that just one video could require multiple shoot days. It could require multiple sets. It could require additional resources to pull off the complexity of the shoot. It could require B-roll that can't be shot in one sitting. It has to be an event that is happening in a different region or even at a different time. Just one video isn't the measure for what a production takes. And I think for the most part, we're relatively articulate and clear about why it costs this much. And I still find it is an education piece. There's a misunderstanding of what video should cost. Also because there are tools out there that you can make high quality content to a degree with limited tools. It's just, again, the production value of that. And I think even being able to articulate why you're having this conversation with us in the first place. Like if you can do it yourself, you can. That's totally within your rights as a business. If you have an in-house video team, good on you. That's awesome. We're here to support those people that don't have that level of resource, don't have the resources to run that team ragged to do all of their needs. We're here to support those needs. And for those companies that don't have an in-house video team, even as a marketing team, there is a gap between what a marketing team often, I shouldn't paint this with brush with everybody, but marketing teams often don't fully understand the scope of what video takes, right? They understand video from a guerrilla style run and gun, phone shots, can put together something quick. But oftentimes there is still a gap in understanding what it takes to put an effective campaign together with video. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to do is say, hey, leave it to us. We are the experts in this area. Let me explain why the budget makes sense, and you have to make a decision from there. And I think there is a misconception that even if it's just one deliverable, that it takes a lot to get there. Now, understanding that in these uncertain times, everyone is very passionate about every dollar they have, which is great, and that's the way it should be. And obviously in times when the economy hasn't been great, you're not necessarily wanting to spend 5 figures, 6 figures on a video production. And so we can empathize with that as a small business and understanding that every dollar counts. And so oftentimes what we try to do is provide more bang for your buck, right? Like, I know that's a cheesy saying, but we're trying to give them as much as possible. So if we're in there and maybe the outcome is they only want one deliverable, but what else can we do in this process to maximize the shoot day or shoot days, plural, maximize the content that's coming out of this? Maybe it's smaller clips to be used elsewhere. Maybe it is an entirely different deliverable. Trying to find the ways to make this more palpable for them to digest and say, listen, like, understanding that this is a big investment for you. It's an important campaign. You understand the importance of that, which is why we're having this conversation. Our goal is to now make the most out of this content for you for the most value. And I think that separates us from others in that sense. You can come in and hire a vendor and say, this is what I want. They're going to give you what you want. And if you want anything more than that, they're going to charge you extra for it. Every time you want something more, you want to use that video again, charge you more. So I think really is trying to meet them halfway and say, listen, it's not cheap to capture a video of this style, quality, magnitude, but let us try and make it the most out of it for you. And I think that's really where we have to meet clients right now, because it's an investment to do a video production. It's not a small investment for some businesses. And our objective is to make sure that we can explain to you why the budget is what it is, why it costs this much to do a production of this value, and then you can make that decision from there. But I do think generally that is the goal, is to make the client appreciate and really understand the value of the services we're providing. And I think we go beyond that on the customer service side too, in my opinion. I think we are here to help your company achieve its objectives, and we're going to try and do that as best we can through our expertise in video.
And I think it's the difference between being a video production vendor and a video production partner, right?
It is.
Because to your point, we can have a client vendor relationship where it's
We do.
right. We have,
but we treat them. I think we treat all of our clients like partners, even if it's just one of those one-off projects. Like, we're not just going to say, give me all the details you need, and I'm not going to ask questions. You just need to give me everything, spoon feed me what you need. We're going to do our background on them anyways, and make sure we bring our A game for everybody, even if it is just. But there is a difference between a vendor and a partner.
Yeah, and I think, like, just in concept, right? Like, if you have a video production vendor, to your point, they're going to do exactly what you ask of them, no more, no less. Mm-hmm. And most places are going to do a decent job. But we often experience clients coming to us saying there is something about that type of dynamic that didn't land for them. Mm-hmm. It could be budget, but it might not necessarily be budget. It could be quality. It could be the transactional nature of the relationship. It could be the missing the mark of finding the essence of their business. It could be the campaign didn't convert. Now, mind you, there's a collaborative effort and how something is distributed as opposed to how it's produced. But there's so many times where we hear that working with a video production vendor left the business wanting more. There was some type of gap there.
Absolutely.
And budget is not the only place where that is. It sometimes is,
yep.
But to your point, that often can be as a result of lack of trust, lack of understanding, lack of transparency, lack of education on where your hard-earned dollars are going. You know, I think, excuse me, there are so many ways in which we try to over-deliver, right?
Yeah.
To your point of trying to not only maximize our clients' investment in us and in our expertise, but then also just, trying to be a good partner, right? The money changing hands is important because we're a small business too, right? But also we want to be not only a successful business, but we want to be an effective partner to the people that we work with. And there's so many ways we do our best to do that. And a big part of that is being transparent and letting clients know the same way we try to understand them, we strive to have them understand us and our side of things and where we're going, how we're going to leverage video to achieve their objectives or help them.
Yeah, and I think we're always transparent about it. And I think, in my opinion, that's a good place to kind of wrap today's discussion is, we are interested in having these relationships that go beyond transactions with our clients, and is something we're looking to do with more clients. And I think one of the ways is to start a discussion. And so I think, for anybody that's listening, contact us and we can have a chat. It doesn't have to be, it's literally just a fact-finding mission to understand what your needs are and how we could support that. And I think it's something that, again, we do for value. We're not trying to gouge anybody, and we're trying to provide value for the service that we do.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. This has been great, Darren. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in.
And yes, we will see you on the next episode of OMG, a podcast. Thanks for tuning in. He's happy. He got to do the thing.
Thanks for tuning in to the OMG podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and gained some valuable insights into storytelling with video, startup life, and our community impact in Kitchener-Waterloo. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on social media to stay updated on future episodes. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, reach out to us at info@onwardmediagroup.com.